Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass called to remove obstacles for new police recruits and pledged to root out officers with ties to right-wing domestic extremist organizations. Bass is looking to remove obstacles for police recruits who fail to initially qualify for training as a means of further diversifying the LAPD, according to a summary of her public safety goals obtained by Fox News Digital, but police union leaders are questioning the move. Bass' summary of goals for police reform includes a list of provisions as well as dates by which the department must report back regarding progress. One provision says a deputy mayor will work in conjunction with a third party to evaluate the personnel process and identify obstacles to entry for recruits who fail to qualify for training. "We think that particular provision or that goal or that idea is dangerous," said Tom Segat, from Los Angeles Police Protective League. "With this policy the equivalent of a downgrade of police standards, why take that decision when crime rates are steadily increasing across the U.S.? Congressional Republicans erupted on Twitter Sunday afternoon after the U.S. Energy Department reportedly assessed that the COVID-19 pandemic likely originated from an accidental lab leak in China. The Energy Department, which was previously undecided on the origin of the pandemic, now joins the FBI's stance that the coronavirus likely spread due to a mishap at a Chinese laboratory, the Wall Street Journal reported, citing a classified intelligence report recently provided to the White House and key members of Congress. The lab leak theory, or the theory that the virus came from a lab leak at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China, was widely dismissed as a conspiracy theory and misinformation by Democrats, major news outlets, scientists, and social media companies in the early stages of the pandemic. Now, Republicans are calling for accountability from the Chinese Communist Party as evidence mounts that it is to blame for the pandemic. If it really came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China, would this be the Chinese bioweapons program? Former President Jimmy Carter had a good day on Sunday and may have some time left, according to his niece Leanne Smith. Smith said Carter is still talking and eating and that he requested she bring him soup for dinner. "He had a good day," Smith told us. "In fact, about 30 minutes ago, I got a text. They knew I made broccoli and cheese soup, so before I came to meet with you, I dropped broccoli and cheese soup off to be delivered to the house, because he's eating and talking so it is amazing. He's still got some time in him, I just feel like it." Earlier this month, Carter had decided to spend his remaining time at home receiving hospice care instead of receiving additional medical intervention. Carter, 98 years old, was the 39th President of the United States. He was diagnosed with cancer in early 2015 after undergoing liver surgery, and his cancer would later spread to other parts of his body. Carter told his Sunday school class in December of that year that he was no longer suffering from cancer. Sunday school at Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains, Georgia, where Carter used to teach, was held as usual on Sunday, in which one of his nieces, Kim Fuller, spoke about being prepared to answer Jesus' call to go and do good things. Jamie Lee Curtis addressed nepotism in Hollywood after winning a Screen Actors Guild Award on Sunday. "I'm wearing the wedding ring that my father gave my mother," Curtis told the audience as she accepted the award for her role in Everything Everywhere All at Once. She reminded the room at the Fairmont Century Plaza that her famous parents, Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis, didn't always have the perfect love story. "They hated each other, by the way. But my sister Kelly and I were born from love," she said. "My father was from Hungary and my mother was from Denmark, and they had nothing, and they became these monstrous stars in this industry they loved so much. My parents were actors." Curtis previously slammed the notion that the term Nepo Babies was just designed to try to diminish and denigrate and hurt in a scathing Instagram post where she proclaimed herself an OG Nepo Baby. Since Jamie Lee Curtis became a household name in the Halloween franchise, she's reprised the role 7 times and added starring roles to her resume, including True Lies, Freaky Friday, A Fish Called Wanda, and Scream Queens. Upon winning the Best Cast in a Motion Picture SAG Award, Curtis said, "On behalf of my crew of weirdos, we appreciate your love and support." Nearly 200 people have been arrested for alleged poor building construction following the catastrophic earthquake that struck Turkey earlier this month. About 50,000 people were killed across Turkey and Syria after the earthquake struck on February 6. The ministry said that 626 people were suspects after buildings fully collapsed or were seriously damaged in the wake of the earthquakes. Some of the suspects died in the quake while police are still hunting for others. On Saturday, Turkey's Justice Minister Bekir Bozdağ said evidence had been collected at thousands of buildings. More than 5,700 buildings in Turkey have collapsed, according to the country's disaster agency, and questions have been asked about the integrity of structures in some areas of the affected regions. The thing that strikes mostly are the type of collapses, what we call the pancake collapse, which is the type of collapse that we engineers don't like to see, said Mustafa Erdik, a professor of earthquake engineering at Boğaziçi University in Istanbul. In such collapses, it's difficult, as you can see, and very tragic to save lives. It makes the operation of the search and rescue teams very difficult. Erdik also told the images of widespread destruction and debris indicates that there are highly variable qualities of designs and construction. He says the type of structural failures following an earthquake are usually partial collapses. Total collapses are something you always try to avoid both in codes and the actual design. Attorneys representing accused Florida killer clown Sheila Keene Warren are asking a judge to allow them to include details about an inmate who allegedly bragged about carrying out the 1990 murder for which their client has been charged, records show. A Maine inmate named Edward Barr boasted to a cell block neighbor decades ago that he murdered a woman in Wellington, Florida, a defense court filing states. He allegedly made similar statements to corrections staff, and while also incarcerated in Connecticut. When confronted by police about his alleged claims, Barr told the detective he would tell him everything he knows concerning the death of Marlene Warren if he could promise him he would not get the electric chair, the motion states. But when the detective told Barr that he could not promise him that, Barr requested to speak to an attorney before answering any more questions. The latest motion comes as a judge is already mulling several other requests from the defense team, including that he dismiss the case altogether because lawyers argue the prosecution dragged their feet too much on bringing charges. Police arrested Sheila Keene Warren on September 26, 2017, 27 years after Marlene Warren's death. Investigators learned Keene Warren, who was married to someone else at the time of the murder, went on to wed Marlene Warren's husband in 2002. The pair had been living in Tennessee, where they operated a restaurant. Defense attorneys have argued that prosecutors suspect Warren's husband was involved in the murder scheme, though he has never been charged in connection with the crime. Millions of student loan borrowers could see up to $20,000 of their debt canceled depending on the outcome of Tuesday's U.S. Supreme Court hearing on President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program. How and when the justices rule will also determine when payments on federal student loans will resume after a pandemic-related pause that has been in place for nearly 3 years. The Biden administration has said that payments will resume 60 days after litigation over the forgiveness program is resolved or at the end of August, whichever comes first. Biden announced the targeted student loan forgiveness program last August, but the implementation was put on hold by lower courts before any debt forgiveness was granted. The justices will hear arguments in 2 cases Tuesday concerning the program, which is estimated to cost $400 billion. One case was brought by 6 Republican-led states that say they would be harmed financially if the forgiveness program goes into effect. The other case was brought by 2 borrowers in Texas who don't fully qualify for debt forgiveness under the program. Plaintiffs in both lawsuits argue that the administration does not have the authority to cancel the student loan debt under the proposed rules of the program. But the Biden administration argues that a 2003 law grants the executive branch the power to discharge federal student loan debt in the event of a national emergency, including the COVID-19 pandemic. On so many occasions over the past 2 seasons, the Los Angeles Lakers have fallen behind by a big margin and failed to make any type of real run, let alone come back to win. Early on, Sunday's contest against the Dallas Mavericks looked like it would be the same old story. They went up by as many as 27 points, as the Lakers couldn't throw a pea into the Gulf of Mexico. But LA started to find its game late in the second quarter, as it cut its deficit to 14 at halftime. Then in the third period, it asserted itself, as it sped up the pace of the game and started to flex its defensive muscles while establishing an advantage on the boards. Down the stretch, the Lakers were able to make more big shots and plays than Dallas, and it resulted in a 111-108 victory for them. This win was humongous in multiple ways. For one, it elevated the Lakers into 11th place in the Western Conference, and they're now just one game behind the 10th place New Orleans Pelicans and 2.5 games behind the Mavs, who are still in 6th place. But perhaps more important is the symbolic importance of this victory. Los Angeles overcame a giant deficit to win even though it was without starting point guard D'Angelo Russell, and even though it shot just 43.3% overall and 17.6% from three-point range. The Boston Bruins continued their impressive win streak on Saturday night with 3-1 victory over the Vancouver Canucks, and while it seems like nothing can stop the momentum of this NHL leading team, one game official briefly slowed down one of the Bruins' star players. Brad Marchand has registered a goal and/or assist in the last 5 games for the Bruins, and Saturday was no different. He scored a goal to help Boston to its 6th straight win, but the star winger was briefly tripped up late in the second period, and it wasn't any of the usual suspects. Fan favorite Wes McCauley, a longtime NHL referee and former player, seemingly checked Marchand close to the boards as he handled the puck with his head tucked. The resulting hit, as some on social media have called it, sent Marchand to the ground with McCauley seemingly unmoved. A wild night for the Bruins was capped off with an empty net goal by Boston goaltender Linus Ullmark, who became the 13th goalie in NHL history to score a goal. Tornado sightings were reported in Oklahoma and Kansas as a powerful storm carrying strong gusts moved from Texas Panhandle Sunday evening. Tornado watches and warnings remained in effect in Oklahoma as of early Monday morning. At least 2 tornadoes were spotted in Oklahoma City, and damage was reported in the Norman and Shawnee areas. Widespread gusts ranging from 70 to 90 miles per hour were reported in southwest Oklahoma. A tornado took down trees and power lines and damaged a home in the city of Liberal, Kansas. And wind gusts of 114 miles per hour were recorded in Hall County, Texas. Other gusts in Amarillo and El Paso exceeded 70 miles per hour, and one person was injured in El Paso County's Fort Bliss after they were blown off their feet. El Paso's 71-mile-per-hour Y. Blowing dust advisories with high wind warnings were issued for much of New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma through early Monday morning. The advisories are expected to shift east throughout the day into the Ohio and Mississippi valleys. The severe storm threat on Monday covers an area extending from Indiana and Ohio down to Tennessee, with the highest risk expected across eastern Kentucky, southern Indiana, and Ohio. The threat of severe weather will decline on Tuesday as the storm system pushes off the eastern seaboard. NDS made for the 7th strongest gust recorded in the city.